No one questioned the old human anymore. Every cycle, at the same silent hour, he walked through the coldest section of the station. His steps were slow, careful. The metal floor burned with frost beneath his boots, but he never complained. He carried a small metal tray with both hands. On it sat a single cup, steaming gently. Tea. The frozen ward was not a place for rituals. It was a graveyard of living statues. Beings too dangerous, too powerful, or too ancient to kill were locked here in crystal ice. Time barely touched them. Even the lights seemed afraid to shine too brightly. At the center of the ward stood the largest figure of all, a dragon nurse. Her body was tall and elegant, frozen mid-gesture, wings folded like carved stone. Scales of deep blue crystal reflected the cold light. One claw was open, as if reaching for someone who never came. Long ago, entire fleets had burned at the sound of her voice. Now she was silent. The old human stopped before her every day. He placed the cup of tea on the floor, directly beneath her frozen hand. The steam rose. It always rose. Security drones watched from above. They recorded everything. And every time, their logic cores hesitated. Because the man did not belong here. He wore no insignia, no rank. His uniform was old, patched, faded almost to gray. Official records listed him as a maintenance worker, a cleaner, nobody. And yet, the ward doors opened for him. No alarms sounded. No weapons activated. Other species whispered about it. Humans are obsolete, the station's medical director once said. Their wars ended centuries ago. Their kind is weak now. The old man heard those words many times. He never reacted. Instead, he spoke softly to the frozen dragon. I'm late today, he said. His voice was rough, tired. The heating grid failed again. Same problem as before. He adjusted the cup so it sat straight. I brought the strong kind. You always said it helped with the cold. Of course, she had never said anything. Not since the war. The ward temperature dropped another degree. Somewhere deep in the ice, a faint sound echoed. A crack. The old man froze, not in fear, but in attention. His eyes lifted slowly to her face. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the sound came again. A hairline fracture spread across the crystal near her chest. Thin, almost invisible. The security drones zoomed closer. Readings spiked and then vanished. The system could not explain it. The dragon nurse's heart had not beaten for 300 years. Yet the sensors flickered. The old man exhaled slowly. His shoulders sagged, as if carrying a weight no one else could see. Easy, he whispered. You're safe. No one will hurt you. The lights dimmed without command. Across the station, power conduits hummed louder, straining. Engineers looked up from their panels, confused. The frozen ward was isolated. It did not draw this much energy. The station commander received the alert seconds later. Unauthorized activity, frozen ward. He frowned. Again? Is it that human? Yes, an aide replied. The janitor. The commander clenched his jaw. Remove him. Now. But the order stalled. The system rejected it. No reason given. Back in the ward, frost began to melt. Drops of water slid down the dragon nurse's frozen scales, hitting the floor with soft, echoing taps. The old man reached into his coat and pulled out a small cloth. He wiped the water away gently, like a caregiver tending a patient. I told them not to rush this, he murmured. They never listen. The air grew warmer. Too warm. Warning lights flashed red for the first time in centuries. Stasis failure, level 1. The old man did not move. He stood straight now, no longer hunched. For a brief moment, he did not look like a cleaner at all. He looked like a soldier. He raised his hand, not in command, but in promise, and rested it against the ice. I'm here, he said quietly. Just like before. The dragon nurse's eye twitched beneath the crystal. And somewhere deep inside the station, something ancient began to wake. The lights went out. And in the sudden darkness, the cup of tea continued to steam. Emergency lights flooded the station in deep red pulses. For the first time in centuries, the frozen ward was not silent. Alarms echoed through the metal corridors, sharp and panicked. Technicians ran. Drones hovered without clear orders. Systems argued with themselves, locking and unlocking doors in endless loops. At the center of it all, the old human still stood in front of the dragon nurse. The ice had not fully broken. Not yet, but it was no longer stable. Cracks spread like veins across her chest and wings. Each breath of warm air made them grow. The man did not step back. Behind reinforced glass, a group of station officials watched in disbelief. "That thing is waking up," one of them hissed. "Why hasn't security removed the human?" The chief of security slammed a clawed fist against the console. "Because the system refuses. Every override fails." "That makes no sense," the medical director said. "He's a janitor." The word felt wrong now. Inside the ward, the dragon nurse's vitals appeared on screens that had been dark for generations. Slow, weak, but real. Her heart beat once. Then again. The old man closed his eyes. "So it's starting," he murmured. "Took longer this time." A tremor ran through the floor. Frost shattered near the base of her statue, scattering crystal shards like glass snow. The station commander finally arrived, breath heavy, uniform immaculate despite the chaos. "Explain," he demanded. No one could, until a junior analyst spoke, voice shaking. "Commander, I found something." She projected a hologram. Old, corrupted, a human military archive, long sealed. The commander frowned. "Why would we still have human war records?" "We shouldn't," the analyst replied. "They were classified under a dead protocol. One that only activates if." "If what?" he snapped. "If a verified human veteran is present." Silence filled the room. The hologram sharpened, revealing a name. Not a rank, not a title, just a service mark burned into history. The old man's name. The commander felt cold. "That war," the medical director whispered. "That was a myth. The suppression era, before the council unified." "No," the analyst said. "It was erased. On purpose." Inside the ward, the dragon nurse let out a low sound. Not a roar, a breath. Ice fell away from her jaw, clattering across the floor. Steam rose from her mouth, mixing with the cold air. The old man looked up at her face. There was no fear in his eyes, only exhaustion, and something else. Guilt. "I told them you wouldn't stay frozen forever," he said softly. "They never listened to humans." Her eyelid trembled. A single slit of glowing blue opened. The station shook violently. Emergency shields snapped into place as a wave of pressure rolled outward. Consoles sparked. Drones dropped from the air like dead insects. In the observation chamber, several aliens stumbled back. "She's conscious," someone whispered. The dragon nurse's eye focused. On him. Her gaze locked onto the old human, and the pressure vanished instantly, like a storm choosing not to strike. She tried to move. Ice cracked loudly around her shoulders, but the stasis field pushed back, holding her in place. A deep, resonant voice echoed through the ward. Weak, but clear. "Why are you here?" The words vibrated through bone and metal alike. The old man smiled faintly. "Same reason as always," he replied. "Someone needed to watch." The station commander stared at the live feed, stunned. She recognizes him. The analyst swallowed. "Sir, the archive is still loading. There's more." The hologram shifted. Images appeared. Battlefields. Not human ones. Entire alien cities burning. Medical stations under fire. Evacuation ships packed beyond capacity. And humans. Not as leaders. Not as conquerors. But as shields. They stood at corridors holding lines so others could escape. They dragged wounded aliens to safety. They fought enemies no one else would face. The dragon nurse's voice echoed again, stronger now. "You should not have come back," she said. The old man nodded slowly. "I know." Her eyes narrowed. "They told me your kind vanished. That you grew small. Weak." He shrugged. "We got tired." "Not weak." Another crack split the ice. Her arm shifted slightly, claws flexing for the first time in centuries. The ward temperature spiked. "Commander!" the chief of security shouted. "If she breaks free." "She won't," the analyst interrupted quietly. They all turned. "She hasn't yet," the analyst continued. "And she could. The system shows she's limiting herself." As if to prove it, the dragon nurse exhaled carefully. The pressure eased. The alarm softened. She was choosing restraint. Her eyes never left the human. "Why do you bring the drink?" she asked. The old man glanced down at the cup of tea, still steaming despite everything. "Because you liked it," he said. "And because it reminded you that you were alive." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a low, almost broken sound escaped her throat. A laugh. It shook dust from the ceiling. "You remember," she said. "After all this time." "I remember everything," he replied. The observation chamber erupted into frantic discussion. "This changes everything," the medical director said. "If the dragons wake." The council will panic, the commander finished. And the humans? The analyst asked softly. The commander looked at the archive again. At casualty numbers so high they barely made sense. They will be remembered, he said. In the ward, the dragon nurse's other eye opened. Her full attention settled on the old man now. Guardian, she said, voice carrying a weight no title could hold. You kept your watch. He did not correct her. Instead, he reached down and adjusted the cup of tea once more, steadying it as the station trembled. Rest for now, he told her. You're not ready yet. She studied him. Then, slowly, she closed her eyes again. The cracks stopped spreading. The temperature stabilized. Across the station, alarms fell silent one by one. The commander exhaled shakily. What? He asked. Have we been sitting all this time? The analyst answered without looking up. A promise, she said, and a species that never left. Back in the frozen ward, the old human remained standing, watching, waiting, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy had begun to remember a name it was never meant to forget. The station did not return to normal. It pretended to. Light stabilized. Gravity leveled out. Emergency messages cleared from screens. To outside observers, the crisis appeared contained, a near failure corrected in time. But inside the frozen ward, nothing was the same. The ice around the dragon nurse was no longer smooth. It was scary, cracked, alive with faint lines of light that pulsed slowly, like veins under skin. The stasis field hummed constantly now, no longer silent, no longer confident. The old human felt at the moment he took a step back. She was awake, not fully, not free, but be aware. And awareness, he knew, was the most dangerous state of all. He picked up the empty teacup and placed it carefully back on the tray. His hands were steady, but his breathing was slower now, measured. The kind of breathing learned under fire. Behind the reinforced glass, the station commander watched him closely. That posture, the commander said quietly. That's not a civilian. No, sir, the analyst replied. It never was. New data streamed across her console. Not from the station. From somewhere deeper. Older. Something just unlocked, she continued. A memory vault. Dragon origin code. The commander's eyes narrowed. Because she's waking? Because she recognizes him, the analyst said. Inside the ward, the dragon nurse's eyes opened again. Both of them. The light within them was dimmer than legends claimed, but it was unmistakable. Ancient. Focused. Intelligent beyond measure. Her gaze did not move. It stayed fixed on the human. You smell different, she said slowly. Older. Slower. He smiled faintly. That happens when you don't freeze yourself in a block of ice. A faint ripple of amusement passed through her. The stasis field spiked, then settled. They told us humans were gone, she said. That your worlds turned inward. That you forgot the stars. We did, he replied. Just not all of us. She shifted again. This time, the ice did not resist as strongly. A long fracture split across her wing, shedding shards that shattered on the floor. Security teams flinched behind the glass. She's testing the limits, the chief of security warned. No, the analyst whispered. She's remembering them. The dragon nurse tilted her head slightly, studying the human as if he were a puzzle left unfinished. You never asked to be released, she said. Others came. Kings. Councils. They begged. I wasn't here for that, he answered. I was here to make sure you weren't alone. Her breath caught. For the first time since her awakening, her voice softened. You stayed, she said. After the screams ended, the ward seemed to dim around them, as if the station itself were listening. The old man nodded once. I promised, he said. Memory flooded her. Not gently, not slowly. The vault opened fully. Across the station, screens flickered to life without command. Images projected into the air, ghosts of the past forced into the present. A battlefield under a shattered moon. Dragons falling from the sky, wounded, burning. Medical structures collapsing under bombardment. And humans, everywhere. Bleeding, dying, standing their ground anyway. The dragon nurse's voice trembled as she spoke over the images. We were losing, she said. All of us. Even the strong. The human said nothing. We called for aid, she continued. The council debated. Calculated losses. Measured worth. Her claws curled slowly. Only your kind answered. In the observation chamber, the commander felt something heavy settle in his chest. These were not myths. These were records. They sent us, the dragon nurse said, to hold the line while others escaped. They told us we would not survive. The human finally looked away. They told us the same thing, he said. The images changed. A narrow corridor filled with smoke. Humans formed a living wall while alien civilians fled behind them. A young human soldier, barely more than a child, dragging a wounded dragon medic to safety. The dragon nurse's breath hitched. That one, she said. He shielded me. The old man swallowed. He didn't make it, he said quietly. The image froze. The station was silent. Even the machines seemed to pause. The dragon nurse closed her eyes. When the war ended, she said, we froze ourselves. To prevent another one. To become reminders. Warnings. She opened her eyes again, burning brighter now. But they erased you. The human nodded. They needed heroes that wouldn't argue, he said. Statues don't speak. A tremor shook the ward. Not from her power, but from something else. A signal. Long range. The analyst's console screamed warnings. Commander, she said sharply. We're getting external pings. Unknown origin. Multiple vectors. The commander turned pale. Someone felt this. Yes, she replied. Someone ancient. The dragon nurse lifted her head. I know that signal, she said. I felt it before the first world burned. The human's expression hardened. They're early, he muttered. Her eyes snapped back to him. You knew this would happen. He did not deny it. I hoped it wouldn't, he said. But hope has never been a plan. Behind the glass, the chief of security whispered, what is coming? The dragon nurse answered without looking away from the human. The ones who taught us fear, she said. The reason we froze ourselves instead of ruling. The station lights flickered again. Far beyond the outpost, something massive shifted in the dark between stars. The dragon nurse tested the stasis field once more. This time it bent. Not broke. Bent. The human stepped forward instinctively, placing himself closer to her, not farther. You're not ready, he said firmly. She studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Neither is the galaxy, she replied. The images faded. The ward returned to its cold, tense quiet. But the silence no longer felt empty. It felt like the breath before impact. The old human picked up his tray. He paused, then placed a fresh cup of tea beneath her hand. Rest, he said. Just a little longer. Her eyes followed him as he turned to leave. Guardian, she said softly. When they come, will your kind answer again? He stopped at the door. Did not turn around. We never stopped, he said. The ward doors closed behind him. Across the stars, the signal grew stronger. And the ice, at last, began to melt on its own. The galaxy noticed the silence first. Trade routes that normally buzzed with constant chatter went quiet for a fraction of a cycle. Deep space relays hesitated before passing messages. Ancient sensor arrays, older than most civilizations, shifted their focus without command. Something had changed. At the frozen medical outpost, the station commander stood alone in the observation chamber, staring at the ward through reinforced glass. He had sent everyone else away, not out of authority, but instinct. The kind that said history was moving again. Inside the frozen ward, the dragon nurse remained half-bound by ice and stasis, her massive form no longer a statue, but not yet free. The human stood several steps away now, leaning lightly on his tray as if it were a cane. Neither of them spoke. The silence between them was heavy, shared, and deliberate. You should leave, the dragon nurse said at last. Her voice was calm, but the words carried warning. The human shook his head slowly. Not yet. You are not what you once were, she said. Your body is failing. I can hear it. He smiled without humor. It's been failing for years. She watched him closely, ancient eyes tracing every line of wear in his posture. Why stay, she asked. The signal has gone out. When they answer, this place will burn. He looked up at her then. When that happens, he said, someone needs to explain things. Outside the station, the first reply arrived. Not a message, a presence. Long-range sensors screamed as a distortion appeared at the edge of detectable space. No ship signature, no known drive pattern, just a wound in reality, slowly widening. The analyst ran into the observation chamber, breathless. Commander, she said, we've confirmed it. Multiple old human channels just activated. The commander's eyes widened. Old how? Pre-council, she replied. Pre-alliance. Some of them were believed destroyed. The human channels did not broadcast loudly. They whispered, and the whispers spread. On distant colony worlds, farmers looked up as their skies flickered. Old satellites, scrap, forgotten, powered on for the first time in centuries. Deep beneath planetary crusts, sealed bunkers unlocked themselves. Humans emerged quietly, not with cheers, not with banners, with lists. Inside the frozen ward, the dragon nurse felt it. "They are moving," she said. "Yes," the human replied. "They always do, once the waiting ends." Her claw flexed again. This time, the stasis field groaned audibly. "You never ruled," she said. "You never demanded tribute. Why does the galaxy fear you now?" The human considered the question. "Because they forgot what quiet looks like before violence," he said. The distortion in space widened. A shape began to form. Not elegant, not beautiful, functional, ancient. The dragon nurse's eyes narrowed. "They are here," she said. "No," the human corrected gently. "They're watching." The commander's console exploded with incoming data. Emergency summits were being called across dozens of systems. Panic spread faster than information. "Why now?" the commander whispered. "Why awaken the dragons? Why reveal humans?" The analyst answered, voice tight. "Because the enemy doesn't care about our politics, only our readiness." Inside the ward, the dragon nurse shifted her shoulders. Ice shattered completely along one wing, falling away in a cascade of crystal shards. She did not attack. She did not flee. She waited. "You carry guilt," she said suddenly. The human did not deny it. "For those who died," she continued. "For promises you could not keep." He nodded once. "Yes." "Then listen," she said. "You kept the most important one." She leaned forward as far as the stasis would allow. "You stayed." The human's jaw tightened. Outside the station, the distortion stabilized. A signal pulsed outward. This one was not subtle. Every advanced civilization felt it. An ancient challenge, encoded in physics itself. The dragon nurse hissed softly. "They announce themselves," she said. "They want fear." The human sighed. "They always do." The commander slammed his hand on the console. "Can we respond?" he demanded. The analyst shook her head. "Not officially. The council is still arguing over jurisdiction." A pause. "Unofficially," the commander pressed. The analyst hesitated, then tapped a command. A single human channel opened. No flags. No anthems. Just a voice. Old. Calm. Familiar. "This is a general advisory," the voice said. "To any who still remembers standing in the dark." The dragon nurse's eyes widened. "That voice," she said softly, "is not yours." "No," the human replied. "It's his." The voice continued. "We are awake. We see the signal. We are responding. If you are listening and afraid, good. Fear keeps you alive." The channel closed. Across the galaxy, beings stared at their screens in stunned silence. That was not a declaration of war. It was a reminder. Inside the frozen ward, the dragon nurse inhaled deeply. Ice around her chest shattered outward as her lungs fully expanded for the first time in centuries. The stasis field flared dangerously. Alarms began to scream again. The human stepped forward immediately. "Not yet," he said sharply. She froze, not by force, but by choice. "You command me now?" she asked. "No," he replied. "I'm asking you to trust me. One last time." She searched his face. Then slowly, she exhaled. The stasis stabilized. For now. Outside, the distortion shifted again. More shapes appeared around it. Not enemies. Observers. Old species. Watching to see who would stand. The commander's communicator buzzed nonstop. "They're demanding answers," the analyst said. "They want to know why humans are involved." The commander looked at the frozen ward. "At this point," he said quietly, "I think the better question is why humans weren't." Inside the ward, the dragon nurse lowered her head. "When this begins," she said, "there will be no more hiding. No more erasing." The human picked up the tray one final time. "I know," he said. He turned toward the exit. "Where are you going?" she asked. "To do what I've always done," he replied. "Which is?" she pressed. He paused at the door. "Make sure the right people wake up," he said. The doors sealed behind him. The dragon nurse watched the empty space where he had stood. Then she smiled, a slow, dangerous expression. Beyond the station, the ancient enemy finished assembling its message. It echoed across the stars. And for the first time in a very long time, the galaxy did not answer alone. The enemy did not attack right away. That was how the old human knew it was truly them. They always waited. Across the galaxy, the ancient signal repeated itself, not as words, but as pressure. It bent sensor readings, disrupted navigation, and made even hardened commanders uneasy. It carried intent, sharp and patient. We are here. We have always been here. At the frozen medical outpost, the station commander stood before a projection of star maps that would not stop changing. New distortions appeared every hour, each one farther inside known space than the last. They're probing, the analyst said, testing response times, measuring fear. And the council? The commander asked, still debating whether this qualifies as a hostile emergence. The commander let out a short, humorless laugh. Of course they are. Deep beneath the station, in a section that did not officially exist, the old human walked alone through a corridor that had not been opened in centuries. Dust lifted with every step. Lights activated only where he stood, following him like obedient ghosts. The door at the end of the corridor recognized him instantly. Not by code, by presence. It opened without sound. Inside waited a chamber carved directly into the asteroid's core. No banners, no symbols of rank. Only a circular table surrounded by empty seats. Except one. A hologram flickered to life above it, resolving into the image of an elderly human woman with steel-gray hair and tired eyes. "You're late," she said. He smiled faintly. "You always say that. And you're always right on time," she replied. "I was hoping you wouldn't need to come down here again." "So was I," he said, lowering himself into the chair. The hologram studied him carefully. "You look worse." "Feel worse," he corrected. "But the dragon is waking. That means the signal went out." "Yes," she said. "We felt it. Every sleeper cell, every archive, every old scar." She gestured, and the chamber filled with ghostly images, human settlements scattered across space. Small, quiet, ordinary. Most of them don't even know what they are part of, she continued. They just know what to do when the sky changes. "Good," the old man said. "That means the training worked." The hologram's expression darkened. "The enemy is closer than expected. Faster." He nodded. "They always adapt." "Then we may not have time," she said, "to wake everyone, to prepare properly." The old man leaned back, closing his eyes briefly. "Then we do what we always did," he said. "We hold." Back in the frozen ward, the dragon nurse felt the shift. Not in temperature, in intent. Human space had changed its posture. She flexed her claws slowly, feeling strength return to muscles that had slept too long. "They are choosing to stand," she murmured. Behind the glass, the analyst looked up sharply. "Commander, human channels are multiplying." "How many?" he asked. She swallowed. "All of them. Across the galaxy, ancient human networks activated in sequence. Not loudly, not dramatically, methodically. Navigation beacons realigned themselves to old defensive patterns. Trade stations quietly evacuated non-combatants without explanation. Civilian ships altered routes, guided by suggestions that sounded like coincidence. And beneath it all, a simple message moved from system to system. "Move aside, or move with us." The enemy noticed. The distortion in space pulsed, irritated now. A response rippled outward, violent, dismissive. A border system vanished. Not destroyed. Erased. One moment it was there. The next, only empty coordinates remained. The council panicked. Emergency sessions collapsed into shouting. Species demanded protection, demanded answers. "Where are the humans?" someone shouted. The answer came before the council could decide anything. A single human ship emerged at the edge of the erased system. It was old, scarred, alone. Sensors identified it as obsolete by every modern standard. The enemy struck it immediately. Energy tore through space, enough to shatter moons. The ship did not dodge. It absorbed the hit. Shields flared, human shields. Layered, redundant, built to fail slowly. The ship burned, and kept moving. Inside the frozen ward, the dragon nurse's eyes widened. "They are not retreating," she said. "No," the commander whispered from the observation chamber. "They're advancing." The human ship reached the center of the erased system and stopped. A transmission burst outward, carried on every frequency, every medium. Not a threat, a statement. "This line holds." The enemy struck again. The ship broke apart, and from its wreckage, something unfolded. Not one ship, many. Human ships, long hidden within the first, nested like layers of history. They separated, forming a defensive lattice exactly where the system had once been. Space stabilized. The erasure failed. For the first time in millennia, the enemy hesitated. In the frozen ward, the dragon nurse laughed, a deep, resonant sound that shook ice loose from the ceiling. They learned, she said. They learned from us. Behind the glass, the analyst stared at the data. That ship, it was a coffin, she whispered. A delivery system. The commander nodded slowly. They didn't come to survive, he said. They came to arrive. Across the galaxy, more human ships appeared. Not in fleets. Not in formation. Individually. Each one chooses a point of weakness. Each one stopping. Holding. The enemy pushed harder. Systems burned. Stars dimmed under strain. Human ships were lost. But the line did not move. In the hidden chamber, the hologram looked at the old man. They're paying the price, she said quietly. He opened his eyes. They always do, he replied. So others don't have to. Back in the frozen ward, alarms screamed as the stasis field finally failed. The dragon nurse stepped free of the ice. She stood at her full height now, wings unfolding slowly, power rolling off her in waves that made the station groan. Security teams froze, not in fear, but awe. She turned toward the observation chamber. Tell the council, she said, voice carrying across every channel, that the guardians are awake. The commander swallowed and nodded. She looked down at the empty space where the old human usually stood. And tell the humans, she added softly, that the dragons remember. Far beyond the station, the enemy shifted its focus. It had expected screams. It had expected collapse. Instead, it found lines, held by a species it thought was finished. The quiet had spoken back, and it was not done speaking. The galaxy broke into motion. Don't panic this time. Alignment. Worlds that had never trusted each other synchronized defenses without debate. Trade fleets rerouted to evacuation lanes already prepared, lanes no one remembered authorizing. Old military installations powered up under mountains and oceans, their systems greeting human signals like long-lost friends. It was happening too smoothly, too quietly. The enemy noticed that too. From the deep distortion, new shapes emerged, vast, asymmetrical forms that warped light and crushed gravity around them. They were no longer testing. They were committing. At the frozen medical outpost, now anything but frozen, the dragon nurse stood fully awake beneath the shattered remains of her stasis chamber. Engineers and soldiers watched from a careful distance, unsure whether to kneel or flee. She ignored them. Her attention was fixed on the stars. They are angry, she said. This is good. The station commander stood beside her, hands clasped behind his back, trying not to show how small he felt. You sound pleased, he said. I am relieved, she replied. Anger makes them predictable. Her wings twitched once, scattering frost and ice shards across the floor. Where is the guardian? She asked. The commander hesitated. He's elsewhere. Coordinating. She nodded slowly. Of course he is. Across space, the human line held. Barely. Human ships burned at every point of contact. They were not the strongest vessels. They were not the largest. But they were stubborn. Every ship was a wall, and every wall was built to fall only after buying time. The enemy pushed harder, adapting its weapons, shifting tactics faster than most species could track. Entire human squadrons vanished in blinding flashes of energy. And still, more ships arrived. Not faster, not louder, just enough. On a council world far from the front, an enormous plaza filled with statues of ancient leaders stood beneath artificial sunlight. Species gathered there in terror, watching the war unfold on public holos. One of them spoke what many were thinking. Why don't the humans retreat? An elder asked. They're dying. A younger one replied, voice shaking. Because if they do, the line moves. Above them, the hologram shifted to a live feed from the front. A human ship, its hull torn open, atmosphere venting, drifted into position between an enemy strike and a cluster of civilian transports. The enemy fired. The human ship took the hit. It shattered, but the energy dispersed just enough. The civilian ships escaped. The plaza went silent. Someone whispered, statues don't bleed. Back in the hidden human chamber beneath the outpost, the old man sat alone now. The hologram chair across from him was empty. He watched casualty lists scroll past his eyes, each name landing like a weight. You're running out of time, a voice said from behind him. He turned. The dragon nurse filled the chamber, her massive form barely contained by the space. Ancient symbols along the walls flared faintly in recognition of her presence. I told you not to leave the ward, he said. She ignored the comment. You are burning your people, she said bluntly. Holding lines they cannot hold forever. He met her gaze evenly. They don't need to hold forever, he said. Just long enough. For what? She demanded. He stood slowly, joints protesting. For the galaxy to remember what defense looks like. She studied him for a long moment. You always speak in fragments, she said. Humans and their half-truths. He smiled tiredly. Full truths scare people. The dragon nurse stepped closer. You are not planning victory, she said. You are planning survival. Yes, he replied. For everyone else. Outside, the enemy broke through a secondary line. 3 systems fell in rapid succession. The council panicked again. Emergency calls flooded every channel. We need decisive action. Why aren't the humans counterattacking? Where is their fleet? The answer came quietly. From deep human space. A region long considered empty. The stars went dark. Not extinguished, masked. The enemy paused. Something was wrong. Inside that darkness, human ships gathered. Not damaged ones. Not relics. Fresh. Silent. Built not for holding lines, but for ending them. In the hidden chamber, the dragon nurse felt it. You hid this from us, she said slowly. The old man nodded. We learned, he said. The first time, we showed our strength. The enemy adapted. So you became invisible, she said. Yes. She looked at him sharply. Even from your allies. Especially from them, he replied. Her claws curled. You trusted no one. We trusted time, he corrected. And sacrifice. The darkness moved. Human strike fleets emerged, not as a wave, but as precision instruments. They slipped through enemy formations, bypassing strength, targeting anchors, disrupting the very distortions that held enemy space together. The enemy reeled. It tried to respond, and found its weapons misaligned. Its attacks fell into empty space. Human ships did not shout victory. They did not broadcast threats. They simply worked. One by one, enemy nodes collapsed. The line stopped bending. Then it began to push back. On the council world, the plaza erupted into noise as observers realized what they were seeing. The humans aren't just holding, someone shouted. They're dismantling them. A voice answered quietly from a nearby screen. No, it said. They're ending it. The dragon nurse closed her eyes, feeling ancient fears stir and then fade. You became something else, she said to the old man. Not warriors. Not guardians. What then, he asked. She opened her eyes. Caretakers, she said. The enemy lashed out in desperation, unleashing a final, massive surge of energy toward the outpost itself. Alarm screamed. The station shook violently. The dragon nurse turned without hesitation. She spread her wings fully for the first time in centuries. Now, she said. The old man tapped a control on his wrist. Now, he agreed. Human defenses around the outpost activated. Layers upon layers that had never been listed on any station schematic. The dragon nurse inhaled deeply and breathed. Not fire. Balance. The enemy's surge unraveled mid-flight, its energy dispersing harmlessly into space. For the first time, the enemy felt something unfamiliar. Resistance that did not break. Across the galaxy, statues stood unchanged. But now, everyone understands the truth. They were not monuments to power. They were warnings. And the species they depicted was done being forgotten. The galaxy did not celebrate. Not yet. Victory was forming, yes, but it was quiet, unfinished, and fragile. The enemy was retreating in pieces, collapsing inward as its anchors failed. Entire regions of space stabilized again, as if reality itself were exhaling after a long-held breath. But everyone knew something was wrong. The enemy was not fleeing. It was withdrawing with purpose. At the frozen medical outpost, now transformed into a command nexus without ever being declared one, the dragon nurse stood at a wide viewport overlooking the stars. Her wings were folded, her posture still, but her eyes tracked movements far beyond the reach of the station's sensors. They are gathering themselves, she said. Wounded predators are the most dangerous. The station commander nodded grimly. Our analysts agree. They're pulling back toward a single point. A core, she replied. A heart. Behind them, The old human sat in a chair that had not been designed for comfort. He looked smaller now, thinner. The strain of coordination, of watching lives wink out across 1,000 fronts, was etched deeply into his face. "They're going where they always go," he said quietly. "Where they think we won't follow." The dragon nurse turned to him. "You will." He did not answer right away. Instead, he looked down at his hands. They trembled slightly. "Yes," he said at last. But not like before. Across the galaxy, something unprecedented began to happen. Statues changed. On dozens of worlds, monuments that had stood untouched for centuries began to react. Not through technology, but through memory. A stone figure of a human soldier, shielding alien children, cracked down the center. Light spilled from within. Not energy. Data. On another world, a statue depicting a dragon coiled protectively around a medical station began to glow softly, projecting ancient star maps into the sky. People gathered in fear and awe. "What's happening?" they asked. The answer spread from world to world. The statues were not just memorials. They were keys. Long ago, when humans and a few others realized the galaxy would forget them, they planned for it. They embedded knowledge into art, into stories carved in stone, into symbols no one thought to question. Now, as the enemy retreated, the keys activated. Defense grids hidden beneath cities came online. Ancient supply caches unlocked themselves. Entire fleets, mothballed, buried, disguised as debris, received final activation commands. The galaxy was not just being defended. It was being rearmed by its own past. In the hidden chamber beneath the outpost, the dragon nurse watched streams of data pour in from worlds that had never spoken to each other before. "You prepared them," she said slowly, "even knowing they would forget you." The old man closed his eyes. "We prepared them because they would forget us," he said. "That's the difference." She studied him. "And you were willing to be erased." "Yes." "Even now?" she pressed. He opened his eyes and met her gaze. "Especially now." Far beyond known space, the enemy reached its core region and stopped. It turned. The final signal it sent was not subtle. It was furious. Stars along its path dimmed as if recoiling. Gravity warped violently. The signal slammed into every mind capable of receiving it. "You hide behind ghosts. You borrow strength you do not deserve. Come and be erased properly." In the council world, panic surged again, but this time, it did not turn into chaos. A senior counselor stood before the assembly, trembling but resolute. "We cannot ask humans to do this alone," she said. "Not again." A murmur spread. "They never asked us before," another replied. "No," she agreed. "But we can choose to stand now." Across the chamber, representatives of species long divided rose one by one. Not with speeches, with acknowledgments, commitments. Ships launched. Allies moved. Late, but moving. At the outpost, the dragon nurse felt the shift and smiled faintly. "They are coming," she said. "This time with you." The old man shook his head. "They're coming because of us," he said. "That matters." The final human fleet assembled at the edge of the enemy's core. This time, it was not quiet. It was deliberate. The ships formed a wide arc, leaving space at the center. A path. The enemy surged forward, eager, confident in its mass. Then the path lit up. Human ships did not fire first. They transmitted. Not threats. Records. Battlefields. Evacuations. Sacrifices. Lines held by people who never expected statues. The transmission cut deep. The enemy faltered, not because it felt guilt, but because it finally understood. These humans did not fight to win. They fought to deny inevitability. The dragon nurse stepped forward, her image broadcast across allied fleets. "This ends now," she said, her voice steady and immense. "You will not erase what you chose to endure." The enemy lashed out with everything it had. Stars screamed. Space store. The allied fleets held, just barely. And then the statues moved again. Not physically, symbolically. Ancient safeguards triggered across the galaxy, feeding power, data, and stability into the allied line. Every forgotten promise activated at once. The old man watched the battle unfold from his chair. His breathing was shallow now. The dragon nurse turned sharply. "You are failing." He smiled weakly. "Timing's never been my strength." "You should be resting," she said. "You've done enough." He shook his head. "Not yet," he said. "There's one more thing." He tapped a final command. A human signal went out, not to fleets, not to allies, to memorials, to statues, to stories. A simple message embedded everywhere humans had ever been forgotten. Remember us, but do not depend on us. The enemy's core began to collapse under coordinated pressure. It screamed, not in pain, but in denial. This time, the line did not hold. It advanced. The Allied fleets pushed forward together. The enemy folded inward, consuming itself as its distortions unraveled. And then, silence. Real silence. The battle was over. Across the galaxy, beings stood stunned, watching the stars return to normal. On the council world, someone whispered, "What now?" At the outpost, the dragon nurse knelt beside the old man. His eyes were closed. For a terrible moment, she thought. Then he inhaled weakly. Still alive. Barely. She bowed her head. "You will not be forgotten again," she said softly. "I swear it." He smiled, eyes still closed. "You don't get to decide that," he murmured. "That's up to them." Outside the viewport, statues across the galaxy stood as they always had. But now everyone knows. They were not relics of a dead age. They were witnesses. And they were watching. The galaxy took a long time to speak again. Not hours. Not days. Years. The war did not end with celebration or conquest. It ended with silence. Deep, careful silence. Like a civilization afraid to breathe too loudly after surviving a storm meant to wipe it away. Trade resumed slowly. Borders were redrawn without arguments. Old rivalries faded, not because they were forgiven, but because they felt small now. And everywhere, statues stood. At the frozen medical outpost, reconstruction crews worked with unusual care. No one rushed. No one argued over authority. It had become an unspoken rule that some places were no longer just stations or facilities. They were markers. The dragon nurse remained. She no longer needed the frozen ward. The ice was gone, the stasis chamber dismantled and preserved as a historical artifact. She chose to stay anyway, standing near the wide viewport, where she could see the stars she once feared she would never see again. And beneath that viewport sat a small table. On it rested a single cup. Tea. The old human did not wake again. He passed quietly 3 weeks after the battle ended, his body finally surrendering after his purpose was fulfilled. There were no alarms. No final orders. Just a long exhale and a stillness that felt complete. The station commander was with him when it happened. He didn't ask for anything, the commander later said. No honors. No burial world. No monument. The dragon nurse had said nothing at the time. She had simply bowed her head. The galaxy found out anyway. Human channels, once whispers, spoke one last time, not to command or warn, but to inform. The Guardian has ended his watch. That was all. The reaction was not immediate. Then it spread. In a distant agricultural world, workers stopped when they heard the message and removed their headgear in silence. In a council world, an emergency session was called, not to debate, but to stand together. And then the statues changed. Not dramatically, not all at once, but subtly. In one world, rain fell for the first time in decades, washing dust from a stone human figure that depicted a soldier holding the line. Beneath the grime, an inscription long eroded became readable again, held so others could pass. On another world, a dragon statue that had once been feared was quietly reclassified, not as a symbol of dominance, but of protection. Children began asking questions. Why is the human not holding a weapon? Why is the dragon kneeling? Why are they together? Teachers answered carefully. Because once, when the galaxy froze in fear, they chose to stay awake. At the outpost, the dragon nurse finally moved the cup of tea herself. She poured it slowly, the way he had always done. Careful, respectful, as if time itself were fragile. She placed it on the table and sat across from the empty chair. "You would have liked this," she said softly, gazing at the stars. "They are arguing less." Of course, there was no answer. But she continued anyway. "They still forget things," she added. "They always will. But they remembered long enough." Memory rippled outward. Human worlds, small, quiet, deliberately unremarkable, received visitors for the first time in centuries. Not conquerors, not officials, pilgrims. They came to see how humans lived now. They were disappointed. There were no grand fleets on display, no towering monuments, no proclamations of victory, just ordinary people, farming, teaching, fixing machines, sharing food, and sometimes offering tea. In the council world, a final vote was held. Not for war, for recognition. The record of the suppression era was restored. Not rewritten, not glorified, but complete. Human losses were listed plainly. So were dragon sacrifices. So were the names of worlds that no longer existed. At the end of the record, a single line was added. Defense is not dominance. It is a remembrance. Back at the outpost, the station commander prepared to leave. His reassignment orders had arrived weeks ago, but he delayed them. Are you staying? He asked the dragon nurse. For a while, she replied. Someone should. He hesitated. You could rule now. Many would follow you. She smiled faintly. That is why I will not. As his transport departed, the dragon nurse remained by the viewport. She lifted the cup of tea and let the steam rise. Far away, in a small colony world, a statue was unveiled quietly. No crowds, no speeches, just a human figure seated at a table, hands wrapped around a cup. Opposite him, an empty chair. The inscription read, "He stayed." Years passed. The enemy did not return. Not because it was destroyed completely, but because it learned something it could not accept. The galaxy was no longer predictable. Lines could form anywhere, and some species did not need to be remembered loudly to be dangerous. At the frozen medical outpost, now officially renamed the Watch, visitors sometimes noticed something strange. No matter how cold the station was, no matter how thin the power reserves became, the cup of tea near the viewport was always warm. Engineers could not explain it. Historians did not try. The dragon nurse knew better. One quiet cycle, long after the scars of war had faded, she spoke into the stillness. You were right, she said. Statues do not bleed. She looked at the cup. But they remember. She raised it slightly, a gesture learned from a tired human long ago. To humanity, she said. The ones who carried the galaxy when it could not stand. Beyond the viewport, stars burned steadily. And across countless worlds, statues stood unchanged. Not as symbols of power, but as proof that when the universe froze, someone served tea and stayed.